In this section, we're going to be taking a look at how to use Maya to build our own custom Lego piece that we find in the different Lego sets or that exist within the Lego universe. So let's go ahead and get started. So here I am inside of Maya, and the piece that I've chosen is this windshield that you see here. And so basically, let me go select this geometry and hide this reference that we have here, so you can kind of take a look at what the actual geometry is that I built for this. This is just based off of a brick or a Lego piece that I found, and I found this one to be interesting. I would like to kind of use this with the other pieces that I've already made. And so what I have found to be kind of the best way of approaching this is to take this Legos that I've kind of have already built up. I built some very simple bricks, then some simple flat type of pieces. And so that's already kind of set up. So I already know kind of the grid settings that I'll be using, things like that. So let me go ahead and load up the grid settings in case you're curious about what those values might be in every option that's kind of turned on. It's the same thing that was looked at in the earlier videos, but just in case you need a reminder, this is the grid settings that I'm using for this. The other thing that I did for myself is I actually took this Lego piece and with some other pieces, I built a very simple kind of pattern for myself to know how large this piece is and how it interacts with other pieces. So you can see here, this is a flat piece and it goes back 1, 2, 3, 4 notches back, and it's 4 across. These are some simple blocks right here, and it goes up 1, 2, and then it has this flat piece, which is the same as like what you have down here, the thickness down here for this one, but it just doesn't have the attachment part, and it just becomes something kind of smooth. So I took a picture of that, and I'm using it inside of Maya as an image plane. I'll go ahead and show you in Photoshop. Here is the image that I took, and I cropped it. If I go to image size, we can take a look at these are the actual sizes for this, and I'll put this on pixels. So it was 225 by 209. The size of this doesn't really matter. I usually try to keep my image planes square, so if I kind of cropped it wrong like that, I could go to image and I can go to canvas size, and then I could extend this thing and make it maybe 225 and by 225, something like that. If I was going to be very specific about things, I might want to say go to image size after I do that and make it square, and then I might want to resample this and then go to pixels and make sure this is 256 by 256 or 512 by 512, 1024. It's not that big of a deal for the image plane stuff, but making your image plane square usually does kind of help things out a little bit. So also I've got this little black bar that's down there now. I'll just hold on Alt and click on this color picker here and just paint across this. Let me make sure that's on normal. And at this point I'll hit the bracket key left to make my brush size a little bit smaller. And then now I can just go ahead and save this thing out. So it is saved as a JPEG. I usually, for loading things into Maya, I usually save them as a target. So if I do Control-Shift-S, I can do a saved as. And if I put this in here as a target like this, I can save it as a target file, and then I might just save it as 24-bit that you see here like that. So again, for the image planes, I don't think it's necessary that you pull that in as a target, but I just would kind of get used to using target files. So over here in Maya, I've already got this Lego character in here for an image plane that you see, and I'll turn this off reference so I can select it. So this was the first image plane that I put in here, and you can do that by going to any one of your cameras. So if I do spacebar and go out, I've got my quad view here, and I can zoom out here a little bit, and I could take a look at from a top view, front, and a side view. Any one of these cameras, you can go to view and go to image plane, and you can import an image and have an image plane for that particular view. So I actually did that for this front view right here, and that's where I pulled in this image here for that. Once you have one in there, you can take that, and I just took it and duplicated it. So you can hit Control D, or you can go to Edit and you can do duplicate. and that will duplicate that thing off, and it'll push it over, and it'll make a new image plane. If I load up the outliner, if I go to Windows and go to Outliner and open that up, and I see all this stuff in my scene, I've been making a folder called image planes and then just storing them in there. So here's the first one. When I duplicated it, it just made another one, and I just pushed it off to the side. When you select an image plane, if you hit Control A to bring up the attribute editor, you can go ahead and go to this part here, which will allow you to switch out what that image is. So if I go here and I navigate and I find here in my reference, you can see I've got the windshield as a JPEG, and I can load these up. So here's the one that I just extended that out, or I could load up the target file. Either one, doesn't really matter. I can hit open, and you can see based off of the image size, it might change the image plane size. If you want that thing larger or smaller, all you have to do is you can put it on your move, scale, and rotate tools, and you can make that thing larger or smaller. You can put it on the move tool, you can move it around. I do believe, yeah, you can actually even rotate the thing around if you wanted to. So I'm going to put this back to the image that I had before, and let me select on these and let me find which one that I had, because I built myself one that I thought would work pretty well for just reminding myself about the sizes and things like that. So I'll go ahead and hit open for that one, and I can just scale that thing back down. So again, I'm not concerned about scale or anything else like that. I just want to use this as a piece of reference and being able to look at reference while I'm building this thing. So that's the first step to kind of getting this set up. Let me go ahead and hide the final product of this. So I'll select it, hit Control H, and let me go ahead and talk about this reference piece that I made here for the different pieces of geometry. If I hide this, basically the way that I made this, I've got this folder that's going to have all the different kind of pieces. So I got the flat bricks, and then I also have standard bricks within here. So flat bricks, I use this piece here, this flat brick 4x2 that you see here. So it goes across 4 and it goes back with a depth of 2. If I just take that whole group and I duplicate it, so I'll hit Control D like that, and I don't want it within this kind of grouping, I can unparent it by middle mouse dragging it out like this and kind of throwing it in the loose kind of outliner area. That's one way of doing it. Or I can hit undo. I could hit Shift P. Shift P is the unparenting hotkey for that. So I can get that out of there like that. And then I also need a standard brick. So all my standard bricks are hidden right now. So if I hit Shift H to bring back the visibility of that, I can see all of them. Let me hide these. I'm going to do Control H. And do remember that under display we've got hide and show. So I know I'm using the hotkeys for that, but that's where that stuff exists, right? And so I need this one standard brick like this. So I'll hit Control D to duplicate it. And again, I want to get it out of this group, so I'll just hit Shift P, and then I'll unparent it from there. And now I can close up this geometry group. I don't need to see it anymore. I can hide it and hit Control H. So this gives me new pieces to kind of work with. And what I did before is just make a new group, Control G, and I'll call this reference like this. Let me do 02 just because Maya doesn't like it when you name things the same name. So I have to take this brick that you see here, this flat brick, and I'm going to duplicate it, Control D, hold down X to temporarily turn on grid snapping, and then move this and snap it back to right here like this. And now if I take the standard brick and if I move it up by holding down X and moving it up on the grid, I can get it to snap right down to the bottom here. Now I need to move this back. I'll hold down X and move it back down here, right there like that. And now I need another one of these. I'll hit Control D to duplicate it, hold down X and move up right here like this. And now I've got two standard bricks. So I'll just select both of them like this, holding down Control to add to selection there. I'll hit Control D to duplicate these, hold down X and move these over like this. Okay, so that's going to give me everything that I need to start building out this shape. Once I have this on here, I do know there was parts where when I was modeling, if I'd accidentally kind of select this, that wasn't good. I just want to be able to see this for reference, but I don't want to be able to select it. So there's a way that we can do that with layers inside of Maya. So I'll go ahead and hit this group, select it, I'll go over here to the channel box, and if you don't see it, it should exist with this little icon here, and here's your layers down here. There's some different icons right in here, and I do want you to know and kind of observe as you hover your cursor over these icons. You see where my cursor is down here? It's going to update this little tooltips down here. So kind of pay attention to that when you hover your cursor over different things. Because I've got all these selected, I can use this button here, which will say create new layer and assign selected objects. So go ahead and do that, and it's going to give it a name. Maya doesn't like things to be named the same in the layers as it is over here, so go ahead and give it a name. So I'll double click on this, and we can go ahead and give this a name. So I'll just call this ref02 underscore, and I usually use this layer at the end like this. That way I always know that I'm not going to have any kind of naming convention problems with the layers. I'll go ahead and hit save for that. Now you can tell this to turn on and off. So here's your visibility to turn on and off that layer. I believe this P is for something with playback. We don't have to worry about that one. But if we hit this, we can look at our geometry in a template mode. So you can see it, it's kind of see-through, but you can't select it, which is good. The other one is R, and reference allows you to see something, but you can't select it, right? And so that does come in pretty handy. If you click off that, that's going to open that up, and that becomes just a normal thing where you can select it. So depending on what the functionality is that you're looking for, use these different modes within the layers. Last thing I'll show you about this real quick is if we double click on here, you can actually choose a color. And if we choose something like white, or let's just go ahead and choose black and hit save. If we turn on our wireframe on shaded display, you can see now we can control the actual color of the wireframe on our model. If you go back in through here and you double click on it right here like that, if you wanted to make it white, you could save that, and let's just go ahead and update this here. Try red or something to that effect. It's not updating for some particular reason. Let's see. I'm not sure why that's a big deal, but having it open here with the normal settings is going to let you change the wireframe color, but when it's on R, it's kind of looks like it's locked to this black color. So maybe it's just something to note. I wasn't actually aware that that was something that they had set up. But again, that's usually for if you want to show off your model and kind of show off the wireframes. That will become kind of important at that point. So I'm just going to put it on R for reference, and I'll turn off this wireframe on shaded display. And so that should give us everything that we need to get ourselves set up to where we can start modeling this thing. So let's go ahead and start looking at actually modeling. So one last thing before I started modeling is I took all my reference and actually moved it to where everything's symmetrical on the left and right side of the grid. That way I can model something on this side, and if I want, I can mirror it across that way. So what I had before was just kind of pushed off to the side. So that's not a big deal. You could move that and kind of snap that up. So this first starting point is probably not the most efficient way to start off the model. I could probably just start off with doing a poly cube, but I do want to have the excuse to show you one of the modeling tools in here. And so we're going to go to the mesh tools and go to the create polygon tool and load that up. And this tool allows you to basically click and make points, and it'll make polygons out of those points that you have. Now at any point while you're kind of working, if you don't like the points that you have, you can hit backspace and delete some of the points. You can also hit insert on your keypad, and you can move these things around, these different points that you have like that. Not sure, I've been encountering this with this tool. If I hit undo, it just kind of gets rid of the whole thing. So be kind of careful of that, because that is a little bit definitely annoying whenever you're working on this, if that kind of happens to you. So I can again hit insert and kind of move these points here. If I go out of insert, if I'm working here, if I'm done with the tool, I can hit enter, and it'll make that as a polygon shape. So try to remember the reason why that this is drawing black like this is because our normals are reversed, right? So if you look on the bottom side of it, is drawing correctly. So that's telling you something about the surface direction. Again, that's also a display thing under lighting, and we have the two-sided lighting. We can turn that off, but while you're modeling, it could actually serve as a tool to kind of help remind you about the direction of your surfaces like that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit delete on that thing. I'm going to go to a top view, so I'm going to tap the space bar, go to the top view, and basically with the create polygon tool, while I hold down X, I can turn on grid snapping temporarily, and I want to create this square of this exact size right here. So go ahead and hit enter. You can see that's going to make a flat poly for us like that. Now we can take that and hold down X and move this whole poly up till it sits right there on this face like what we have here. Let me go ahead and move it up just a little bit more, and then just check it on the side view and make sure that we're right there on the side. So yeah, so we're good right there like that. And now with this, if I go ahead and take this and if I hit Control E on there, that's going to allow us to extrude this thing up like this, right? So again, that surface direction actually matters. So you can see here it's black. Well, we can fix that in a bit. So I'll just hold down X and then click and drag up until I've got the right height here for this. So I'll go to object mode. It says tap F8, and you can cycle back between component and object. And now we just need to reverse our normal direction on this. So we'll go to mesh display and we'll say reverse, and that will reverse the direction for us. So we've solved a few problems here already, and we've built up some history on this too. So if we select the object, this is something else that you should get used to, deleting your history. Hotkey for that is Alt-Shift-D, and remember that's up under edit, delete by type, and history right in here. So just kind of get used to that hotkey, Alt-Shift-D. You're going to be using it quite a bit. So now there's different ways that I can move these points back, because I need to move them back in here and we need to snap it. I could either move these two verts, so we can right click over there and say vertex and select these like this, or I could hit F10 and I could move an edge, and I can move, basically do the same job, but I'm doing it with a different component. So just know there's different ways to kind of move and kind of snap and everything else like that. So let's go to the side view. So I'll tap spacebar here, go to this section right in here, and the width of a standard brick is two of these, what I've designated as two of these bigger kind of areas for the grid. So I just need to snap to here, kind of like this, and we'll go back and take a look at this. So now already we've got pretty much the basic shape for what this thing would be. And in a kind of proxy world of, you know, building proxy shapes, before you go and build this really nice model, if you needed your team to start working with a rough shape, this might be enough information for them to kind of get going and using that as something that they can kind of temporarily work with inside of the game engine. Okay, so that would be something like my proxy. We can give it a name. So I'm going to call this Windshield _02, and you can see I'm not the best typist in the world, so I kind of struggle with that just a little bit, so just bear with me for those things. So now I want to get some thickness to this thing. So there's some different ways that we could do that. I'm going to unhide my reference just to get it out. So I could basically get rid of all this thickness in here by hitting F11 or right click and say face, and I can select these faces right here like that. I'm just holding down shift as I add that. I'll hit delete, and that'll give me this shape here like this, right? And now I could select all my faces here, so I could do them one at a time, or I could just drag a marquee around that. And let's go ahead and extrude that. So we can shift right click and say extrude face, or we could do Control E to do an extrusion. And now we can use this thickness. If I hover my cursor over this thickness and click and drag this way, I can do this to a specific thickness. So I'm going to do -3 like that. And again, our model is gone black on us. No big deal. We know how to fix that. So we just go to mesh display and we say reverse like this. Okay, so that will give us the thickness aspect of it. Now we need, if you take a look here, we've got some rounding on this outer part right here. So we could select our edges. We can double click on this like this here. And I do know I would be doing this on just one side, but it would be nice to model with both sides, like with Symmetry. So if we hold down Control and Shift together and right click, we can say turn on Symmetry, and I want it with world and x-axis, so I'll turn that on. So now you can see if I double click here, it's going to give me this here. Basically what we did is we went into the move tools and we went into here under Symmetry, and we just used it with a marking menu instead of coming in here into these options. So I do want you to know that where these things actually sit. Okay, so this is giving me a selection all the way around for this loop, and now I can shift right click and say Bevel Edge. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my reference back on, and I'm going to check this angle that we have here compared to the image over here, and looks like it could be a little bit larger, maybe 0.3 or so, something like that. And then now that I've got that angle kind of set, now I need to just use the segments and pull that up. So if I do 2 like that, you see it's giving me that split there. I'd like a little bit more geo in there, so I'm not going to use 3. I'll go ahead and use 4, somewhere in there. And I'm going to kind of zoom in on that and take a look at that. If that feels high res enough for you, which I think that's pretty decent, we could go ahead and leave it on those settings. The other thing to kind of note through here, it does feel a little bit odd with the geometry, like the thickness doesn't stay consistent all the way through here. With this part, if I went to the top and took a look at it, if I was trying to be very kind of picky and super accurate with things, then I might kind of address this part here, but because I think this is some of our first models, I'm not going to be too super concerned about that, but just kind of keep an eye on that for whenever you do things like what we did with this extrusion, and we kind of pulled it in with the thickness. The other thing that I definitely want to fix up is you can see there's a dip in this geo right here like this. So I'm going to select edges. So I'm going to right click on here and say edge, hold down shift and double click, and it should complete that edge out for me. If not, then I might have to select them by hand, one at a time. But I can take this selection now and I can convert it to vertices. So I know that there's verts on each one of these edges, and I want to convert that. So I'll hit Control F9, and me doing the control and then hitting F9, F9 selects verts, but we were in edges, which is F10. So if we hold down Control and hit F9, it'll convert that selection to another selection type, which that comes in very handy at times whenever you want to select things in a particular way. So if I put on my move tool, hit W like this, I'm going to make sure that my move settings are set to world, otherwise it won't snap to the grid correctly. And I'm going to hold down X and temporarily turn on grid snapping, and I'm going to snap this to where everything should be flat at that point. Let's go ahead and check this from the side view because it doesn't feel like I'm getting on the right grid mark here. So I'll hold down X and then snap here like that. And then I need to check down here, and you can see this was going on. We've got some of this geometry that's going down past that line. So I'll just do a marquee around everything because I know I want everything to snap along this bottom. So I'll hold down X and then just snap here like that. And so then I've got this part going, and that's working for this part of the piece of geo that we have here. So again, depending on how complex you want to get with your model, this might be a more refined version of, maybe this is your second pass for your proxy now at this stage, because this is a more accurate kind of shape, but you're not doing some of the finer modeling things like at the top of this there's a notch and there's an actual connector piece here, and then we still have to build all this part down and through here that you see. So maybe what I could do is just turn on this windshield that I've already got and then just push it over, so we can kind of keep looking and figuring out that this is what we're aiming for or modeling. And keep some of those other things in mind too, where that first block shape was maybe your first proxy pass, and then this model here is what you would consider a more maybe second more refined proxy pass that has more information. It's actually got the right thickness and everything else like that. This could actually be used as a piece of collision geometry and would actually work inside of your game engine at that point. So I'll hit that and hit Control H for that. And then we'll move on to this next stage of making the model even more complex. Okay, now that we get this basic shape kind of laid out, let's take a look at the model over here and see some of the additional pieces that we're going to have to make. If I take this lid off and I can observe this thing in the real world, there's actually a little lip of plastic that sits here. There's a plastic piece that goes here with the kind of Lego notch that goes and sits over the top of this. But then I think what we need to work on is at least setting up some support geometry for making that. We also need to kind of take a look at this lip that sits here. So there's plastic that sits over these gray kind of Lego notches here. And there's kind of a trough that goes through here and kind of comes back. You can see there's like this kind of cutout piece right in here as well. So we need to start getting all the geometry in place so we can start making that additional pieces there. So if we select our model in object mode and we shift right click over this, we can say our insert edge loop tool, and we can click and drag on an edge and we can add that. I'm going to hit undo real quick. And I'm going to go to the side view and take a look at this because I need that piece of plastic to sit on top of these Lego kind of notches that we have here. So I'm going to click and drag this out and try to get this as close to what I could see for the grid as possible. And then we're going to go 3 units up right here for the other piece of plastic that kind of sits on top of it like that. So again, I'm trying to get as close as I can with this. If we zoom in on the grid, you can see this one came a little bit higher than the other one, so I'll just hit F9 and select all these verts that we have here like this and put on the move tool, tab W, and hold down X to turn on grid snapping, and then I'll snap that down to this and to this right here like that, and we should have those pieces in. Next thing I'm going to do is go back up to the top, and then you can see that last tool that we used is going to be in here. So we can select that, or we can be in object mode and then shift right click to get to that, just like we did before. I'm going to click and drag up to this grid piece here. I'm going to get really, really close to the grid so we can try to be a little bit more accurate and a little bit closer to that. And so once I release, then that's going to give me this here. And I can hit F9 to go to my verts and move that and snap down to that. So I'll tap X and hold it so I can temporarily turn that on and snap to that part there. I'm going to take a look at the piece. I'm just trying to gauge whether or not that should really be that kind of thickness in through there for that. Let me take a look down here, kind of what we did. So that's I don't know. That's feeling a little bit too thick. So maybe for that part, I should have not gone 3, but maybe 2. And I'll keep what we've got. I'll show you how to easily get rid of edge loops and the verts and everything else like that. That'll be a good way to introduce that kind of tool. So I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to add this right here along this, like that, and I'll come up to the top, and I'll add this right here like that. So I'm going to re-snap those, hit F9, and I'm going to select these and put on W for the move, hold on X and snap like this, and I'm going to take this one and snap that down here like this. So now we've got some extra geo that we don't need. I don't need all this because I made a mistake. We can go and do this. If we right click on here and say edge, we can select this edge like this. Now if we hold down control and right click, we can go to edge loop utilities to edge loop and delete. And if you need to go back, you can go back to this. It's like a rubber band kind of thing. I can go back here. So to edge loop and utilities to edge loop and delete. And if you look and if you hit F9, it's going to get rid of all the verts in there on that. Because if we don't, what will happen is this. So if I double click this and get rid of all these edges by hitting delete, looks like everything's good, right? But if I hit F9, it leaves vertices behind. I can select that like this and hit delete, but it gets a little tricky in certain areas where you could potentially delete something you don't want to. So that other tool works pretty good for getting rid of some of those things. So that's going to give us some of that thickness part for how we're going to start to make some of this geometry inside of here. The next thing that we should do is, if I kind of make this notch on the top, I do need some geometry for that. So we can go back to our insert edge loop tool. So shift right click in object mode, insert edge loop tool, and I would click and kind of drag out from here. It doesn't like this with symmetry on. See how it's kind of giving me this warning? So if I shift right click, let's shift right click. Okay, so I have to be out of the tool to do this. Control shift right click and turn symmetry off, and then I'll go back to that tool, and you can see now it'll allow me to slide on there. So I do believe maybe the new version of Maya, it's on 2016, the new version of Maya will allow you to do those operations with symmetry on. We'll have to see about that. So I can click and drag this out like this, hit enter. And because this is going straight across like this, I can take my verts, so I can change the selection. If you remember converting selection of an edge, Control F9 will do that normally. So if I go to F10, I'm not sure why the selection changed like that. I'll just double click it, hit Control F9, it'll give me all my verts. So I'll tap W to put on the move tool, and then now I can go to the top view and kind of see where this piece here kind of ends. And me looking at the piece of geometry in the real world, I can see that there's a plastic piece and it kind of ends just a little bit past this here. So I'm not going to be crazy accurate, so I think it'd probably make more sense to get it right in through here like this. So I'll hit spacebar to go out like this. And what I've done is basically set myself up to where I could extrude this part out, and I would have the geometry that I need for that. The other thing is there's a split that I would need kind of going down through here. So if I go to object mode, hit F8, shift right click, insert edge loop tool, and I kind of slide this along here like that and get this here. And for whatever reason, that tool will not allow you to, it looks like you should be able to select your edges and convert them, but you can't. So I'm going to double click that in edge mode, hit Control F9 to change my selection, put on my move tool, and go to the top and take a look here. It looks like this thing goes back, this piece of plastic goes all the way back past this at the split right here. So I need to hold down X, and I'm going to snap it to this right here. See how this is the width of one kind of brick like here, like that. And so let's check out the geometry on that. Let's see here. That's set up in the middle. Real quick, let me observe this. So I'm just going to snap this, and I'm just going to kind of move it forward right about here, right on this mark. So I used the wrong mark for that. So now I've got everything I kind of need for that piece there. And then now, because I've got all this kind of set up, what I can do is select these faces right in through here. If I want to select kind of a loop of faces, I can select this first one, hold down shift and double click to here, and you can see it selects all of that. And then now I can extrude that. So again, we can shift right click and say extrude face. That's one way of doing it. We can control the thickness of this, and it's okay if those surfaces kind of run into each other a little bit. We're going to do some cleanup after this is done, and we're going to have to do quite a bit of cleanup, which is okay. So I'm going to take these verts in here. I'm going to hit F9. I'm going to select this, and I'll tap 4 to see through the model, and this right here, and move these up like this. I'll scale these down and kind of get them close to the right size. And now if I shift right click on here, I can say merge vertices to center, and so I can merge them all together right here like that. And then maybe I need this one here. and I'm going to go ahead and hold down V, and that'll turn on vert snapping, and I can snap that right into here like that. And now I can select over these, shift right click and merge vertices to center again, and it merges all those verts together at that point. So now now that I got the top kind of done, I can just select these on the bottom, and I can tap G. I could do last command. That's fine, or we could select a bunch of those and shift right click in there and say merge vertices to center. So now the other part is getting these things all flush. So I'll select these verts. So I'm holding down shift and selecting them like this. And if I hold down X, I can snap to the grid, or if I hold down V, I can snap to verts and see how I can make it flush with these verts in here. So I can select this, 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 and this, and hold down V, and I can click and drag this, and all I need to do is find a vert that is at that height that you see here. The other thing is I want to make sure that these things are flush with each other. So you can see this is at an angle, so I can hold down V, and I can move this forward and hover it over that vert. I can hold down V and move on that axis, and then click there, and do the same thing for this right here. So now we're good on that piece. If I take a look at it again, let's open this, hit Shift H. You can see how this piece kind of comes and wraps around like this here, right? So all I need to do is kind of rearrange my verts at that point for this, and I need to basically take this one here. Let's go to the top and kind of look at this. And if I take this and I kind of work my way around, sometimes you might be better to see perspective and the top at the same time to get a full idea of exactly what it is that you're trying to do. And I want to grab these, and it's going to fit around this thing that we got here, this kind of notch. So I got that, and I'll select this here in this view, kind of move it around there. Then this one will come back like this. So now that I got that kind of laid out just roughly, I can start to try to finesse this a little bit more, kind of make the shape a little bit more appealing at that point. And the only way to get rounding with geometry inside of Maya, you know, like when you're working with polys, is you need to have more faces to actually work with. You need more edges to work with. You need more verts to work with. So right now I've got split, 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 and a split here, and that is just not tons of geometry to work with. So I'm going to go to the object mode. I'm going to get rid of this history. We're getting a lot of history. Alt-Shift-D on that. And I'm going to shift right click and start using the Multicut tool. The Multicut tool will allow you to slide along an edge, and you can hit a vert, and then slide along another edge. And if you hit a vert, you can hit enter, and it'll complete that out. Now this tool will also allow you to draw shapes and things like that if you wanted to do something like that and hit enter. So that's a way to get a lot of geometry pretty quickly that way. I'm going to turn off my reference, but I'm going to finish this out. I'm going to make sure that I'm doing the same operations on the top of the geometry as I am the bottom. So I'm going to do this. I'm just tapping Y for my last tool. And so here's an opportunity where we got a lot of geometry producing this curvature, but I pull that down to 1 point to kind of clean some things up. So now maybe we want to do something like this where we put a split midway between this. So I'm holding down shift while I'm moving this, and you can see it gives you these little markers. So I can snap to 50%. So first you move it on the edge, hold down shift like that, and now I can complete this over here. Let me hit backspace. It's not liking that for some reason, just maybe the camera angle. And I'll hit enter for that. And so you can see I added new piece of geometry for that. to kind of work with. Now I can kind of come here, hold down shift, I'll go to 50% of that line and come down here and hit enter like that. And now I can hit F10 to get my edges. I'll just tap Q to make my selection tool. I'll get rid of this one because it was making a triangle. This one's making a triangle, which is not horrible. It's not bad. It's just I like to stay in quads as much as I possibly can. So I'll use that multi-cut tool again and again. If you wanted to get to that, if you're in object mode, you can shift right click over that and you can see the multi-cut tool there. So let's do 50% again. And for some reason you have to move the camera to kind of get it to split sometimes like that. And I'll do one more through here like that. And so I'll hit F10, tap Q to get my selection tool right here. I'm going to hold down shift and add to this because I want to get rid of these right here and hit delete. And so then now I've got a lot more geometry to start working with. I'll go to the top view and turn back on that reference because I want this thing to conform shape wise to this. So I could take this point and move this one back right through here like this. And again, I don't there's nothing super specific about what I'm doing on this shape. I just want to try to even some of the distribution of this geometry out. Kind of like that. I'll go to the top and you can see that shape is starting to work. If I hide my reference, we've got something like this now. So I'll delete history, Alt Shift D, and that'll delete the history. Now we're in a position where we've got this geometry and we've got something that's on the left side but not on the right side. So this is a good opportunity to introduce you to the mirror geometry tool. So if we come up to mesh and say mirror, we can mirror that, and let's look at the option box for this. I want to cut the geometry, I want to mirror it along the world axis that you see here. The mirror axis is X, which is going this direction. You can see there are a little manipulator here to show you world axis, and I'm going to mirror that across and mirror it in a negative direction. I'm going to tell it to combine with the original and merge everything together. So I'll go ahead and hit mirror like that, and you can see it gives me a mirror copy, puts a split down the center, and sews everything up together. So that usually works pretty good for that tool. So I'll delete the history on it, Alt Shift D, and then that will give us that first notch here. And let's start working on this piece down and through here. Okay, so let's go ahead and tackle this part down here where we need to kind of make this lip that extends out here. And we have a notch cut out. We'll save that for the later part. The first part is just getting this kind of built out and through here. And so I'm going to take these faces right in through here like this, and I'm going to extrude them. So again, we can shift right click and say extrude face, and we can extrude those out. Now one thing to note, if we do this thickness thing, because this is nice and flat, that works. Sometimes you might be getting geometry that kind of extrudes off at an angle because of the normal, the kind of direction coming off the surface of something like this here. If that happens, this little icon here will take it out of local or object mode and put it into world mode, and you can see that's nice and flush straight up and down now. So this comes in handy if you want to make sure that you're going and extruding straight forward, left, right, up, down, that kind of thing. This might come in handy for you at that point. Okay, so I'm gonna hold down X as we drag out, and if I go to the top view, I need to make sure that this is sticking out past one of these brick pieces here like this. So it actually extends right into the middle, kind of where we're at. So this is the middle, this falls in the middle of these two bricks right here, or these two little notches. And so that's where I want that piece to fall in there. I'll hide the reference again for that. And we can do, again, because we know how to mirror now, we can do just one side if we want to. I'm going to take this back. I need this piece to go back to this point here. Let's turn this back on. And if I snap this right to here, that's where this piece needs to come back, because I need to build a piece that's going straight across here like this and fill in that space right there. So I can take these faces right here like this. I can do F11 again, or shift right click and go to faces for selection for that, or sorry, not shift right click, just right click and say face and select that. I'll add these here. I'll extrude that, Control E for that. Now, this is what I was talking about. If we extrude out, it's going to extrude at this weird angle. We can click this to put an object orientation and just move that back like this. When I extrude down the middle, I don't need that face that's there, so I'll just select it and get rid of it. I'm going to get rid of this over here as well, just so it doesn't cause any kind of issues or any kind of problems with any of the geometry. I don't need this inner part here or here. And if I look on the other side of the thing that we extruded here, I don't need that either. So I'm going to get rid of that. And this gives me the opportunity to take my vert here, and I can move it, and I can snap it holding down V, and I can snap it to here and here like that. And then now I can move this and snap it down along through here. I'm going to hold down V and then move it and snap it to here, just like that. Now I've got some extra geometry to kind of work with through here. I'm just going to get rid of this face right here just to make my life a little easier, and I can get rid of this and this one here as well. And I need to get rid of the rest of these faces in here like this. Okay, so that's gonna give me a situation where I need to take this and I could snap it to this part here. So I'll hold down V and I can snap it here like that, and I can take this one down here and I can snap it to this part here. Now those aren't welded together, so if I selected just one vert and move them around, you can see they're not welded. So I could just grab these verts here, and I could shift right click over the vertices and say merge vertices, and do this merge vertices option box right here. And again, that was just shift right click, merge vertices option box like this. And I can put my threshold really low, so I can do 0.001, something like that. And that basically means that threshold means these things are just they're pretty much sitting directly on top of each other. And I'll hit apply, and that'll merge those together. Now if they're not within that tolerance, then it won't merge them together. So it's to kind of ensure that you can just kind of do a large selection over something and merge vertices, and if you know you want them to merge, they should already be kind of sitting on top of each other, and it'll help out with that. So there's a couple different ways that we can attack this corner piece. We could put in object mode, shift right click and go to Multicut Tool, and you can see if I just click and hit enter, click and hit enter, click and hit enter, if I go to F9, I put verts in each one of those places that I clicked. Then you can take the verts and you can hold down V and snap them kind of like this, right? And so we're getting those together. Now we would have to merge those, so I can just select a marquee around that, shift right click, merge vertices, and use this option again, which with a low threshold, and that's going to merge those together. So that's one way of attacking that problem. If I turn off my grid on the bottom down here, I'm going to go into object mode, shift right click, and to say append to polygon tool. Now this tool allows you to fill in holes. So I click on an edge, you see this arrow, it's going to tell me a direction, so just basically follow the arrow, and we can keep going around here until we fill that up. I'm going to hit enter, and that'll fill that piece in. So it's basically we did the same thing in a different way. Now if I hit F10, I can get rid of this edge, just delete it. So now we got the same geometry on the top as we do the bottom. Now I might want to use the multi-cut tool. If I hit F8, shift right click, multi-cut tool, and we're going to slide this across here to here like that, and then maybe I'll put a split down here. Let me hit backspace and make sure I'm selecting that right. Sometimes I have to kind of try that a few different times to get it to go. And I'll hit Y, select this, and go across here like that. Now I could also, continue to do this. It'd probably make sense to kind of do them all like this through here, right there like that. And that gives us our shelf that we've got that kind of sits there. Now we need to have this mirrored across, so I'm going to get rid of all my history. You can see there's a lot of history. So just when you go into object mode, check that out and make sure you don't have tons of history. Alt-Shift-D will delete the history on that. And I'm going to go back up to our mesh and use the mirror. So we're going to mirror across like that. And you can see that now that we have that symmetrical, we're getting pretty close here. The next thing we need to do is kind of build, if you look at the bottom of this thing, it's got this lip that goes around here. So we need to add some supporting geometry for that, and we're going to use the multicut tool for that. So we're going to go in object mode, shift right click and say multicut tool, and then I'll just go ahead and slice from here. Again, you can hold down shift and you can get these increments. Maybe 80 would work. We'll try that. I can go here to this piece, do 80, and it's not allowing me to go through there. I'm just going to hit enter to do a split there. I'm trying to figure out why this is not liking me to go across there, because this tool is supposed to allow you to go across multiple pieces. So that's making me believe there's something wrong with my geometry, possibly. So I'm going to hit enter for that, and hit that vert. It should not be this difficult to do this. Like I said, it makes me think that there is some kind of issue with the geometry. So let me take a look at this and try to figure out what's going on with that. I'll try the multi-cut tool on the bottom and just see if I'm getting the same behavior with that. Shift right click, multi-cut tool, and I'm going to slice from here to here. And I'm getting very similar behavior on that. So let me get rid of these faces. I'm not sure why these faces seem to be an issue, but I can take the multi-cut tool and go through here. Like that. So you're supposed to be able to just go straight through quite a few of them. Like that. So we'll just use the append to polygon tool again. So hit F8, shift right click, and I'll say append to polygon tool. Not exactly sure what's going on with that piece of geometry, but if it was giving me trouble, sometimes I might just delete a piece like what I just did there and continue on with that. So just appending that, let's do Y for last tool. So let me hit backspace on this. And you can see the direction of this here. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to select the right face, so I just got to get a different camera angle. Tap Y for last command, and I'll follow this direction across and hit enter. So that was kind of a brute force way of getting that tool to work. Normally, in most circumstances, this thing slices through multiple edges and things like that, like what you're seeing right here, what I'm doing. So again, not sure exactly what's going on with that tool, but I'm going to delete history on this, and I'll just keep moving forward with this. I'll go ahead and do a mirror again. So go to mesh, mirror, like that. And now I've got a lot of geometry to start working with, and I can start snapping this up. So if I select these right here, I can go to the top view and turn on my reference, And I want to make sure that this is snapped up to this edge here like this, and this part is snapped up to the top here. So I'm going to grab everything I can all the way up to this point. Let me turn off the reference so I can grab the bottom part and snap that all at the same time like this. So I'm going to hold down X and snap. Turn on my reference again and make sure I'm up against this edge right here like that, and that appears to be good. Now I need these to go back in here, you know, turning off my reference. Need these to go back. Let me select them all at the same time and move them. I think that would make more sense. So I'm going to grab this and this here, push it back like this, hold down X and kind of snap through here. Let's take a look at the top in the wireframe mode, and I need to have these should be snapped right along here. So I think that's causing a situation where I moved these too far forward. I'll move this at the same time. Turn off that reference. And sometimes you can see the move manipulator is getting in the way of selection. So let's tap Q to get this. And then put it back on the move tool. And now if I hold down X and move it. So here's something, if I hold down X, it'll snap all those points together. And that's usually the behavior I want. There are some cases where if I put on the move tool, if I go on here and I use move and snap settings, I use this retain component spacing. Now if I hold down X, it'll snap, but it'll move all those pieces together as if they're kind of like a group of things. So I can take this, I'll turn that back off. I just use it for kind of special occasion. And I'm not using it all that often. Now I can take this and I want to align it with these pieces that you see here, kind of like that. And it might make sense to take these and merge them together. So I'll merge these to center, these 2 points like this. Tap G for my last command. Do that, like that. And if I want to make sure they're in the same place, sorry, just trying to rotate around here to find a good view. Maybe I want this way a little bit, and that feels kind of nice, and I can push this up here until maybe we're creating a straight line with this. Now I could make sure I'm snapping to that up there. Vert, hold down V, and then move until I click here, and you can see that should be aligned there. And I want to move this one up and align it to this. So hold down V and click and drag up like that. So it's kind of snapping to that same position there. I think this is aligned here, so that's good. And this is aligned to this. Oops, I'm heading C. So I need to hold down V and snap that. So that took us a while just to get to that part, but we're good. We're going to delete history. Alt-Shift-D to delete. And now let's mirror. So let's go mesh, mirror. And now we got a good copy here. The one thing I want to do is I want to kind of try to view through this geometry a little bit, right? And through this area down the center, and make sure I don't have any weird faces that were in there, and make sure there's nothing kind of in the middle. So I think it looks like everything was good in there. Right, so I don't see any weird geometry in there. So we're good. And now this will allow us to take this part, hit F11, select this right here like that. I might as well go around the whole thing. And we're going to extrude that down And sometimes if I do face selections like that, just to check, I might tap 4 to view wireframe and make sure I don't have any extra faces that I accidentally selected up somewhere. So tap 5 for that. Now shift right click extrude face or control E, and then I can move this down and hold X while I move down, or I could hold down V and just snap to this part there. So you can either use the grid to snap to or your selection of vertices. Okay, so this is giving us, we're really close here. I'm going to select object mode, and you can see I keep deleting history on this. The last part that we need is to have this kind of notch kind of cut out of the geometry. So in order to do that, there's different ways we can go about this, but I'm going to show you the tools for booleans, and that's where you can take one shape and you can kind of cut away from another shape based off of it. And so we're going to use a cylinder. So we're going to go to create polygon primitives, and we're going to do a cylinder and do the option box for this. So radius, we could just create it and let it see where it's at. I do know I'm going to want to use numbers like 16 or 8. I'll go 16 because I think that's going to give us enough geometry for this. Height divisions, leave it here. So let's just go ahead and use that tool. I'm going to close down this for the options for this. So we'll go create polygon primitives, and I accidentally turned on my last time I was using this interactive creation. I'll turn that off. So I'll create polygon primitives cylinder, and then that will just create a cylinder at the origin of the world. And here's the options that I set for this if we zoom in really close to this. So it's really small right now. We'll move it. I do want to snap it to this kind of piece right here. So if I hold down V and snap it right in here like this, there is this circular kind of thing that's been cut out, kind of like that. And looking at the Lego piece, it's kind of hard to see with this reference turned on. It's this notch that's underneath there. It's kind of like coming around and through the middle of that. So if I scale that up, it's kind of somewhere in this neighborhood in here, right here like that. And now if I look at this in the wireframe view, I can kind of take a look at this, and I'm just observing the real part in the real world. And again, it's just kind of like over the top of this little peg that kind of sticks up. It's kind of maybe right along here like this in this kind of scale. So I'm gonna just try to make these some whole numbers here. So I selected this in the scale, hold down shift and select it, and then that allows me to type in one value, and it'll make everything that scale uniformly. So I'll come back here, hide my reference, and now I'm going to take this shape here, select it, hold down shift and select this shape, and then I'm going to go to mesh, booleans, and then I want to do a difference. Now you can union them or do an intersection, but I'm going to do the difference between those shapes. So I ran the boolean operation, and it was failing, and Maya's done a lot of work to make booleans actually work. What I found was that this edge, these edges right here, were moved, and let me hit undo real quick, right back here, and it was this line's directly on this line, and it was just not liking that too much. So I just selected this and moved these forward a little bit, like this, and at that point I did the same thing, selected this one, went to mesh, booleans, and did a difference, and it actually worked. So if you're running into some kind of issue where it's actually not working and it's not doing that cut, take a look for any geometry that's just sitting directly on top of each other, like those edges. That might be what is potentially causing an issue for you. So the next thing, we've got our notch taken out, hit F8, I'm going to delete history. Let's mirror this geometry again. So let's go to mesh and then mirror, and we're getting really close now. So let's delete that, and let's go ahead and let's clean up some of this geometry. If I hit F9, You might want to look and make sure there's no weird vertices or whatever that are floating around or anything. We do have the situation where we've got this piece of geometry here now, and we got this edge. So I'm going to use the Multicut tool to clean up some stuff. I'm going to do Shift, right click, Multicut tool, and you can see I can kind of come through here and split this. I'll hit enter. Again, if this tool is working right, I should be able to just drag from this edge and then go drag from this one. It should automatically do the cut for me and through there for that. It can produce some kind of like, you know, odd spacing or things that you might not be kind of prepared for that. But, you know, if it's done, you can take these pieces and go ahead and snap them right here like that. And at that point, I think you're getting more predictable results for things. The other thing is maybe we take this and use the Multicut tool and start to build some pieces of geometry like this, just so we got some support for this here. And I can do the same thing down here like this, finish it out. Okay. Now this is producing. We've already got situations where this is called an Ngon. So this right here would make that into a triangle. Actually, this doesn't have more than 5 sides. So if you do this, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is actually a quad. It's just been stretched out really, really far. Now, if we were missing this edge right here, that would be considered an Ngon, and that can be bad at times. So I've got that split there, and I think that that works fine for that situation. You can see here I've got an Ngon. So if I shift right click and go to the Multicut tool, what I basically did here was turn this into a triangle. So that turns that into a tri and that into a quad, and that gets rid of the Ngon for that particular spot. The last thing is if you're good with the geometry, and we'll mirror it, then it's time to add the bevel to this, and saving the beveling for the very last part of this. So if we select this, the other thing is the shading on here. If we take a look at this and we do mesh display and we go and soften edges on everything, we can do that. And basically what I'm going to do is build everywhere where I want, like the beveling, I would want hard edges to be on there. So I'll hit F10 and work my way around this, so I can hold down Shift and double click on a lot of pieces, and that will add edge loops for that. So I can hold down Shift and do this right in here. Actually, I don't want a hard edge there. I only want it here, because this is would be where a bevel would be, like this. Adding this edge. You can see that'll work all the way across there. Want this corner like this, and through here. I don't want that edge here. So that's making me think that there might be an issue with the geometry in through here. So we can take a look at that and maybe clean that up. Okay. So hold on Shift and just again, I'm just double clicking in the areas where it can continue out a loop. It'll do the loop for me and add that, and other places I might just have to do one edge at a time for things. So let me show you what's gonna happen here. We're gonna be able to go up to Mesh Display and say Harden Edge on these edges, and you can see it crispens up things. We had that going on before quite a bit, but it was there were some areas for shading. A lot of the shading stuff kind of gets messed up while you model, so you might have to go through this process and do it again. So if I tap G for my last command, I still have that last command of hardening edges, so I can keep tapping G so I can kind of work my way around the model and just verify that this is working. And oops, let's go back here like this. and I deselected that. If you want to deselect, hold down Control and click on something. So if I got this here, hold down Control and it'll deselect that. And so again, mesh display, harden edges, like that. So I think that's getting pretty good. Want these here, like that. Tap G for that. It looks like we're getting pretty close. So I'm working my way around all this part. Tap G for that. The other thing I can do, if I want to get back to this selection, I can store it. So let's store this as a selection. So we can go to Create Sets, and we can do a quick selection set, and we can just call this Edge Hold, something like that. Hit OK. And you can see it shows up in the outliner here. So basically I deselected my edges, and if I want to get back to that selection, I can go into the outliner, just right click on there, and then say select set members, and you can see it's going to give me that whole selection back, and that might come in handy for us, right? It does look like I did miss a little bit here on this. So I missed those pieces, mesh display. We can do hardened edges on that. And again, I could tell it looked like there was some kind of odd shading issue with these faces in here. I wasn't sure why it was doing what it was doing, where it wouldn't give a soft selection or a soft look through here. So we've got that, but we should be able to select this. If I double click this, it's doing some kind of loop around here. So it's making me think that there's just some problem with the geometry. And so I could select those two faces, get rid of them. I'm going to delete history and shift right click and append to Polygon tool. Make this one. Make this one. And now if everything is working the way that it should, if I select these edges, sorry, and soften them, it should do that. But now I should be able to select around this and harden those edges like that. Okay, so I've cleaned that up, delete the history on that. Again, gonna mirror this, delete the history on it, and let's see if this edge is still works on there. It's working pretty good. Still have a few edges that didn't get hit with this, so if I tap F10, I can add that. Let's try to get this back. Select set members and add that. It was getting a little confused as to the selection that I had previously made with the geometry versus what was in that selection set. So if I'm good with this, and if I want to hold these edges and I'm going to use those for my bevels, maybe because I had to fix that, let's go create sets, make a new one. Like this, and I can get rid of the old one like that. Okay, so that's going to give me my hard edges. So this could potentially be your game resolution model, and then if you wanted to keep working on this and kind of push it and make it more high res, which you could bake with like a normal map or something like that, maybe now is a good time where you would kind of split those models off, and this would be the game res model, and then maybe duplicate this thing so you can see this game, and then this would be like high, like this. And if I hide that one, start working on this high one, got this selection set here for this, and then we want to use the bevel tool. So this is the very last part. We're going to hold down shift, right click, and do bevel edge, and it should give us some options for this for beveling. If it doesn't, we can hit F8 we can select the poly bevel over here and get into the options for this. And I think that bevel offset, this fraction, if I do 0.5, that's pretty thick. I want to keep it kind of thin through there, so I think 0.25 will work rather well. And then our segments, just like what we did with the box stuff, if we set this to 4, this gives us a nice geometry that we can cut through here, and it makes everything nice and even at that point. And so let's just take a look around the model and kind of take a look and make sure everything feels correct on it. And I did model the bottom of this a little bit different on the other one, but that's fine. So the last part of this to finish off the model would be to get some of the notches that are off of here. So I'll take this off of reference mode. I'll take these two and duplicate them, Control D, and I'll unparent them. If you remember, the hotkey for that was Shift P, like that. And they're still tied to a layer because I duplicated them off of a layer. Now that they're selected, I can right click and say remove selected objects from the layer, and then they won't be controlled by the visibility thing. They'll just be their own kind of models. And I can take them and I can move them and hold down X and move these forward. Let's take a look from the reference and just line it up to the reference right here, like that. Okay, and now we have that for this piece here. I do think I probably should move these out just a little bit. You can see how this is hanging over the edge a little bit, and I should have given myself just a little bit more space on this. So let's hide the reference. I'm going to take all these verts that exist within here, so all of this right here, like that. And if I accidentally selected something down here or whatever, I can hold down Control and deselect that and just get that selection that you see here. And let's move it out ever so slightly. Kind of like that. I could take this one and move it in just a little bit. I think that's pretty good. And now I'll go ahead and mirror that one last time. And delete the history on it. And now we got a top. Let's call this underscore left. And then maybe this one's top underscore right. And then I can take it all and put it together in a group. New windshield. Like that. And so then now we've got these two pieces modeled out. Here's the old one. And I can take a look at that against the reference. And so basically that is the process for not only starting off and building something that's very simple for the first proxy stage. We pushed it to something that would be acceptable for a second proxy kind of level of the geometry. We pushed it to a very high level of completion for what we could say would be our game resolution, and then we split that off and started to build something that you could consider as more of your high-res game art. But you know, we didn't really push it super far in the high-res part. So if you were going to use this model to use for baking for normal maps and things like that, you would probably maybe do a little bit more work on it and make sure there's no kind of polygonal kind of chunkiness for, like, as we get in here, this is kind of faceted right in through there, which is flat, 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 flat right there. So we would need more geometry through there and things. So you could potentially put it in the smooth mesh preview mode and work on it that way to get it even to be an even higher res model. But I think this will be completely acceptable for what we're doing. Okay, so there's everything for the modeling of this piece, and that should give you enough information to go ahead and create your own custom piece.